Hi, my name is Tara. I work at the Robbinsville branch of the Mercer County Library System, and today we are going to make strawberry jam using the hot water bath canning method. First thing you need to do, you need to pick your strawberries. My daughter and I picked our strawberries today. This is what we have left over. We've already made strawberry shortcake, and now we are going to make the strawberry jam. Let me just slide this back over here. So the first thing you do is you need the strawberries. You can also use frozen strawberries as well. If I'd picked today and I knew I wasn't going to be able to make the jam for another month, I could always freeze them so that they don't go bad. And as long as I defrost them when I'm going to use them, then you're good to go. Just make sure when you freeze them that you don't add any sugar to them, because this recipe has plenty of sugar. Okay, so we've got our strawberries. The next thing that we did, and forgive me, I have already started the process here just in the interest of time. And I may need to stop the video at some point just to catch up and not have to watch the pot boil or waiting for it to boil. So we have our strawberries. We then wash them. You need about 1.33 pounds, which is about 2 2/3 cup. So I actually measured it on my scale, but you can also, use a measuring cup. That's whatever method you prefer is fine. After we wash them, I then hulled them. I use this handy dandy little tool to take the stems out. Makes it easy, but you can always use a knife if you don't have one of those little hullers. So after we did that, we then took the berries and laid them in a pan like this. It's just a glass baking dish. And you layer them, you put one layer of berries in the dish at a time. Because of our recipe, we didn't have to do a second layer, but typically what you would do, you would put down one layer of berries, you would mash them with a potato masher, and then once that layer is done, then you would add another layer of berries and mash those, and so on and so forth. But our recipe is fairly small. We're making 4 8-ounce jars today. And also I want to note that my daughter, who is now in bed, she was the one that mashed the berries for us today. And I will give you like a little quick view at the berries in the pot. And thank her for all her hard work. So typically, the other thing you could do, it's a matter of preference. If you like chunks of berries in your jam, then using a potato masher to mash them is fine. If you prefer a smoother jam, you can always throw your berries into the food processor to make it a little bit smoother. It's your preference. So once we get our berries mashed, we then add them into our 3-quart pot, which I just showed you. I put it on the burner. I haven't turned it on yet. The other thing that we do kind of simultaneously is we prepare our water bath. So now, some people use canning pots. They come with racks inside them, especially because we're making the smaller jars. They're the 4 8-ounce jars. They fit in a regular sized stock pot. So I don't have a canning pot, and it's okay. This works just as well. The key to know whether or not the pot that you have will actually work, you want to make sure you have 3 inches of space above the rim of the jar when you place it in the bottom of the pot. You want to fill the water about 1 inch or 2 above the rim of the jar, and then have another inch, to spare. And that, of course, includes the rack at the bottom of the pot. Now, if you say, what kind of rack do I use? I don't have a canning pot. I don't have a canning rack. You can use a couple things. If you have a cookie cooling tray that fits inside your pot, go ahead and use that. Also, hold on 1 second. I also had considered using this. It fits into my stock pot, and basically it keeps the jars from being on the bottom of the pot. So that's the goal. You don't want your jars on the bottom of your pot, because not only will the excessive heat at the bottom possibly cause the glass jars to break, but it also doesn't heat everything evenly either. So you want to be able to get circulation going around your jars. Excuse me while I put this back. But I happen to have a canning rack. I got it in a canning starters kit. So even though I don't have the pot, I did have a rack. So I'm using that. But really anything that you can dream up that keeps the jars from the bottom of the pot, make it work for you. So what I did was I put the rack in the bottom of my stock pot. I started filling water in the pot. I added my 4 jars. You want to give them a good 2 inches between the jars so that they're not banging into each other. And then I started continuing to fill the water. You want to have water enter the jars and fill the jars that are in the pot, go an inch or 2 above the rim of the jars. Put it on the stove, about medium, and you want it to simmer. And you're just going to let that simmer until you're ready to fill the jars. So that's what I have going on here. It's simmering. The other thing you do want to keep in mind, if it's simmering for a long time, the water starts to evaporate, and then you don't have the same water level, so you want to kind of keep an eye on the water level and refill if you need to. So I've already refilled once, and I've got another measuring cup ready to go if I need it. So the next thing that you are going to do, your strawberries that are in your 3-quart pot, you are going to turn the stove on high, and you are going to add 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Oops. And I'm going to do that now. I don't know if I can talk and add here, but I will go ahead and try. There's 1. And here's, 2. Okay. And then the next thing you're going to add is your fruit pectin. Now, the lemon juice and the fruit pectin kind of act together. So all fruit has naturally occurring pectin, some more than others. Like apples, hard fruits have more pectin than softer fruits like berries, like the strawberries that we're using today. So because pectin sort of acts as the thickening agent in the jam, we need to add a little bit extra because the fruit itself doesn't contain a lot. So we add our 3 tablespoons of our powdered pectin, and I'll just go over briefly. There's also liquid pectin out there. The difference between the liquid and the powdered pectin is that it depends on when you add the pectin. So the powdered pectin you add before you add sugar. The liquid pectin you add towards the end of the process after you add the sugar. So that's the difference. This recipe calls for the powdered pectin. So we are going to add the powdered pectin. The powdered pectin will, in order for the pectin to sort of bond together, when you heat the mashed fruit and add the sugar, the cells in the fruit release the pectin. But in order to get them to bond together and create that gel, or when it sets, you need to lower the pH in the fruit. So that's why we add the lemon juice, is to lower the pH so that the strands of pectin can bond together, and then it thickens. So that is what we are going to do now. And fortunately, this was pre-measured for us, but you do need 3 tablespoons. So we're going to add that as well. And okay, while I talked, I turned it off. But Now, let's see, you are going to stir it together. So I'm going to stir it all together. And then you are going to wait for it to come to a rolling boil. At that point, and by the way, I'm using a, what would be preferable is a wooden spoon. For some reason, I looked high and low, I couldn't find it, so I'm using this silicone spatula, and that should do the trick as well. So once it comes to a rolling boil, that's when you're going to add your sugar. This recipe calls for 3 1/3 cups of sugar, which I've already pre-measured. I will just give you its regular granulated sugar right here. I have it in a little bowl that has even a little spout, so I can pour it right in. Once it's boiling, you're going to want to stir it constantly, and right now it's just sort of a waiting game. After you add the sugar, you are going to dissolve it. You're going to stir to dissolve it, and then you are going to let it come to a rolling boil again, and you're going to let it boil for a minute where you can't stir it down, like it's going to be a hard boil. And then at that point, you can then turn off the heat, take the pot off the heat, and then you are ready to start filling your jars with the jam. So right now, since we are, well, let me see. It's actually starting, it's kind of, I'm trying to decide whether or not to pause the video or not. You know what? I think I'm going to pause for just a minute or two because I don't want you to have to sit here and, well, you know what? Maybe not. There are a couple things I can still talk about, so if I can multitask, we can do that. I will show you some of the other tools that we need. So you're going to need a ladle. You are going to need a jar lifter. So actually it goes like this to lift the hot jars out of the pot. And you're also going to need a wide mouth. See, I can't do 2 things at once. A wide mouth funnel. All right, so it's almost there. We're almost at a rolling boil. And then something else that we are going to need. No, I'm just going to leave that in there. This little handy dandy tool, the little grooves. So the reason why this is handy is the very first one here. Let me see this one right here at that first groove there. When you put that on the edge of the jar, that's 1/4 inch. That is how much headspace you need to leave on the top of the jar. So you fill the jar up with the jam up until that 1/4 inch from the rim. So that helps you determine that. And then I'll show you the other reason why we have that in a minute. Just trying to make sure that this doesn't burn on the bottom, because that would be a shame. I have more berries, obviously, but I don't want to have to start over at this point. And then the last thing, I think, let me see. Yep, the last thing, your glass jars, your 4 8-ounce glass jars should have one of these lids, as well as one of these screw cap bands. I guess they're bands. I keep wanting to call them a screw cap. And here we go. All right, so I think we are at, well, we're not quite there. Let me think. I'm trying to think if there's anything. Oh, the other thing that you are going to need when you take the jars, the hot jars, out of the stock pot to fill them, you're going to want a towel, a thick towel, to put the jars on. And then the other thing you're going to need is a wet towel or a damp towel, so that if you spill any jam on the jar as you're filling it, that you can wipe it off, especially on the rim. That could affect the seal. So you also want to have that handy and ready, which I do have the other side of, on the other side of me. Let's see. Are we there? I'm taking a look at the stock pot that has a nice simmer going. We don't have to add any more water at this point. I'm just taking a gander at this. I'm kind of, at this point, I'm stirring it constantly because I can tell that if I were to stop, it would probably start to stick. So we're just going to keep going. And I think it's probably just about ready to add the sugar. Let's see. Now, I'm going to pause the video. It gets to like a little bit of a boil, but then I'm able to stir it down. And you don't want to be able to stir it down. It's not boiling enough if you can stir it down. So I'm just going to pause the video for probably 2 or 3 minutes to get it to where we need it to be, and then we can continue. All right, I'll be right back with you. Okay, I'm back. All right, so what I've done since we were gone, I added the sugar, let it come back to a rolling boil, let it boil again for another full minute. Once that occurred, I started the video up again. So the next step is that the berries, as they're heated, they release air, and that air is in the form of air bubbles or foam on the surface. So what we want to do is kind of just skim some of that off. So let's see if I can find something. I did not plan for a spoon. I'm going to grab a spoon here. Sorry about that. And we're just going to try and skim. Oops. You can see a little bit of foam there. And you don't want to take so much foam off that, actually I'll just do it there. You don't want to take so much foam off that you're taking the jelly off too. So it's okay if you leave some. You just want to get as much off as you can. There's actually not a whole lot in here. I'm surprised. So I'm just doing my best getting some of it off. And then once we are done that, and I did remove it from the heat, by the way. I took it off the heat. All right, I think we're probably getting to the point where we might be scraping the jelly now too. So, so our next step is going to be to take the jars that have been in the hot water bath out one at a time to fill them. So we are going to go ahead, do that now. Okay. So I'm going to make sure that you do have your towel in place so that you can set your hot jars on the towel. And you want to dump the water that's in it back into the pot, hopefully without burning yourself or dumping it on you. Okay, here we go. Pot is down. I think I might try, and you're going to get your funnel, put it into your jar. I'm just going to see if, yeah, you can see the little edge of that. All right, so now we are going to take our ladle. I'm going to move this a little bit closer. Hopefully I'm not going to make a mess all over everything here. All right, and remember, keep in mind, you want to have 1/4 inch to spare at the top. I sort of know where that 1/4 inch is. So I'm just going to add a little bit more Maybe a little bit more. Let's see. Let's see how I did. Let's take the front. Nope. Nope, there's still more. I can still add a little bit more. All right, hopefully it's going to be harder to take some out. Nope. It's very hard to judge with the funnel in there just how much space you have. So, let's see. I'm really not sure, so I'm going to take my tool. All right, we are pretty close. I think I might just, I think, you know what, I think we're close enough. So the next step is going to be to take that wet washcloth. I didn't really need to wet the whole thing here. Ooh, that was not smart to put my fingers on it. And one thing I didn't mention at the beginning, but which I just thought of now, is that you want to make sure that your jars, before you put them in the water bath, and really everything that you use is, doesn't have to be sterilized, but at least make sure that it is clean. The fact that it is going to be in the water bath for a good 10 minutes or longer means you no longer have to sterilize it. But you do want to make sure that it's clean, because what happens is when, if there's any bacteria or mold spores that's in there, the oxygen that's in there can, and any air bubbles can cause it to then grow, and then it's going to spoil your batch, which you don't want. So you center the lid on as best you can, which I'm not sure how well I did. And now I'm going to take my oven mitt. I suppose I could probably use the jar lifter, but I'll take the oven mitt to hold it in place while I hopefully try and screw this on here. Okay, I obviously was not anticipating that this part would be so difficult. There we go. Okay, now you want to tighten it till you get resistance, but you don't want to tighten it so tight that, you know, it can't be undone. Now you are going to put it back into the hot water bath. And you're going to do this one at a time. Until you get all 4 jars done. And then once you have all 4 jars done, then you change the heat from medium to high, and you want it to boil for 10 minutes with the lid on. After it boils for the 10 minutes, you can turn off the heat, and for 5 minutes let it sit on the heat, but just have it turned off. And then you are ready to remove the jars. And I'm going to go ahead and try and fill another one here. And then once you've removed the jars and you place them again on a thick towel, you let it sit for 24 to 48 hours. So don't touch for that long. I know it's tempting. Hold on, let me concentrate on doing this before I tell you the rest of the story. Let's see how I did. Let's see how I did. I can't remember how that is. Let's test again. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more. Just a little. Okay, so let's take a look at that again. Okay, I think that's good. Oops. Oh, I just splattered all over the kitchen counter. Oops. Oh well. There's a price to be paid, right? I hope I put that in the center. Hang on to it. Try to screw this on. There we go. This one was much easier. All right, I'm not going to over tighten. And we're going to put this back in. All right, remember, leave about 2 inches of space in between the jars. You don't want them banging into each other once the water really starts to boil. The last thing I was going to say before I take my other 2 jars out, I think I'm going to stop here. I'm going to move it back so you can see my face while I finish talking. So after 24 to 48 hours, you want to test the seal and make sure that the seal is good. So you want to press down on the center of the lid, see if it gives at all. If it gives, that's not a good sign. The other thing you can do is unscrew the band and then take your fingernail and try and lift up on the lid. And if you try and lift up and it doesn't lift up, then you definitely have a good seal. So at that point, after 24 to 48 hours, you determine you have a good seal. Then you can go ahead and store it in a cool, dark, dry place for a year. Once you open it, you have to refrigerate it and consume it within a week or 2, which is why I like the 8-ounce jars, because we're a family of 3. We can't possibly eat that much jelly, although my daughter loves peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, so we do a pretty good job. And last but not least, before I have to rush back to finish this up, I don't want to ruin my batch here, I do want to mention a book that my daughter loves that she wanted me to mention. It's Bread and Jam for Francis. And this book is written by Russell Hoban, and Mercer County Library System carries this book. Many of the branches have it. It's either an easy fiction or easy reader. I'm just going to read one little quick snippet from it. This is when she is skipping rope and she sings a song that she made up about jam, and she loves jam. Francis. Jam on biscuits, jam on toast. Jam is the thing that I like the most. Jam is sticky, jam is sweet. Jam is tasty, jam's a treat. Raspberry, strawberry, gooseberry. I'm very fond of jam. So anyway, I hope you try making the jam, and I hope you have good results. Thank you for watching me today. Bye-bye.